Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council special meeting of February the 25th, 2025. Meeting has been called to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarez. Here. Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Here.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Thank you. Item number three, we have closed session. We have a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation and also a conference with labor negotiators. With that, the city council will go into closed session and return back to see if there's any reportable action during this special meeting, and then we will then begin at 7 o'clock the regular meeting. With that, the city council will move into closed session. City Council is out of closed session and has come back to the meeting. There is no reportable action at this time. Therefore, we will go ahead and adjourn to the next regular City Council meeting, which will be held this evening at 7 p.m. Special meeting is now adjourned. Good evening and welcome to the San Bernardino City Council regular meeting of February the 25th, 2025. Meeting has been called to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarez here. Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marty Medina.
Here.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Item number 3, pledge allegiance. For those who are able, if you can please rise and join me and the council in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4, public comments for items not on the agenda. City Clerk.
I have no speaker cards.
We will move on to item 5. Are there any other speaker cards for items that are not on the agenda?
This is actually in regards to the parking item.
No. Okay, item number 5, announcements and presentations. First item, proclamation recognizing March as National Women's History Month, and I'll just read a couple of the whereases. Again, this is declaring March as Women's History Month in the city of San Bruno. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made significant and historic contributions to the growth and strength of our society in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas in honor of Women's History Month, the city of San Bruno wishes to convey our thanks and appreciation to all women that have added to make a difference in our community, our country, through their contributions and effort. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Rico E. Medina, Mayor of the city of San Bruno, do hereby proclaim March as National Women's History Month and encourage all residents and visitors alike to join in celebrating this very special month. We will move on to the next item is item B, receive a general update from the San Mateo County Mosquito Vector Control District. And this will be done virtually.
Okay, good afternoon or good evening. Do I need to share my screen? Sorry. Can you hear
Yes, you will need to share your screen.
me? Okay, thank you. All right, can you see that now?
No, we cannot.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Casey. I work for San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District. I'm here to give my annual presentation for all the work we completed in the city of San Bruno for 2024. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you. All right, just a little background on who we are. We're a taxpayer-funded special district. We have 9 vector control technicians. We have 4 people who work in our lab, and we're all certified through the California Department of Public Health. And our goal is to, maintain the mosquito population in San Mateo County and protect people from West Nile virus, which is our biggest threat in the county. Just a brief snapshot of what happened in 2024. A lot of the work we do is we get requests from the public, and in San Bruno in 2024, we had 101 total service requests. So that's when someone from the public calls and they call about rodents or mosquitoes, or they're noticing yellow jackets. And then our staff, we respond the next business day and we come out to the property and we try and figure out what's going on with the residents, see what kind of issues they're having, and then we kind of come with a solution and try and reduce the population of mosquitoes or give them advice on how to make their properties less attractive to rodents and stuff like that. In San Mateo County, we have about 8,000 potential breeding habitats that we monitor on a regular basis. San Bruno has about 400 or 500 of those. And this year we did 670 site inspections in San Bruno, which resulted in about 130 mosquito control treatments. We try and control the mosquitoes in about the juvenile stage before they become adults. Once they're flying around, they're a little bit harder to control and more likely to bite people and potentially spread West Nile virus. Fortunately, we had no West Nile virus in San Mateo County in 2024. This is just kind of a little map of where all our service requests were in San Bruno. So kind of evenly distributed throughout the San Bruno. The yellow is just kind of different zones. That's in our mapping database, and red is a different zone also. So it doesn't really mean anything to you guys. Kind of what I want to talk today about is kind of what type of mosquito sources are out there and what we're kind of monitoring. So some things we see on people's properties are abandoned swimming pools, fish ponds, fountains. Sometimes we ask the public to help out also. If you notice anything that's holding water on your property and you're capable of dumping it out, one of our big slogans is always dump and drain. So, it's always good if you have stagnant water. You don't want to have it for more than 5 days, especially when it's really hot out. Make sure that water gets dumped out. If there's things that you can't dump out, please reach out to us because those are things we'd like to know about and we can provide control for that until a solution comes up. One of the things we really focus on in San Mateo County, these are some of the issues in San Bruno we kind of notice. Seasonal impounds, so things that fill in with rainwater. San Bruno, South San Francisco wastewater treatment facility. So I'll be talking about that a little later on. But one of the big things is catch basins and storm drains. So there's a picture right here to the right. And storm drains are kind of like where the West Nile virus mosquito tends to breed. That's like their ideal habitat in San Mateo County. So we hire 7 seasonal employees to manage that. And this year they treated about 162,000 catch basins throughout San Mateo County. And that's basically from the months of April through October. In San Bruno alone, we treated about 17,000 catch basins. So these things need to be hit every 2 weeks. So we had someone starting in May treating all the catch basins in San Bruno. They'd be hit every 2 weeks. And that's kind of our primary defense against West Nile virus. Another big thing in San Bruno is Mills Field, which is owned by SFO. So it's kind of a natural area here. And rain fills in all these little impounded areas. And you see how close it is to these neighboring community of San Bruno right here. So if those mosquitoes were to fly off, they'd be a complete big nuisance for all those people that are living right there. So our staff are out there on a regular basis, basically inspecting that every 1 to 2 weeks throughout the year, pretty much. Historically, this area used to be treated by helicopter, but over the years, working with SFO, who owns the property, they've done a lot of really good work with vegetation management out there. And so eliminating vegetation creates water flow. And where there's water flow, there's not going to be mosquitoes. It's stagnant water. That's the big issue. One of the other things, this is another nice picture of Mills Field. You can see what our staff gets to do out there. They're walking through all this stuff, inspecting for juvenile mosquitoes. So before they become adults. And once they find mosquito larvae, then we go into our kind of protection mode. We're trying to treat them and control them in the juvenile stage before they become adults. Beautiful picture there. So like I said, we used to treat by helicopter out here, but we've kind of learned from other districts ways to kind of limit mosquito breeding. And so one of the things we do these high pressure spray into some of the ditches and channels out here. And we've been able to control the mosquitoes really well just to keep the population down. This is Eric. He's our technician out there. So he has a backpack seater on. So he's hiking through Mills Field here with some mosquito control products that can last up to 30 to 40 days and doesn't allow them to become adults. Like I talked about, the San Bruno, South San Bruno wastewater treatment facility. During the hotter time of the year, we're coming out here twice a month, basically. Once again, sometimes these tanks are down for various reasons. And you see a pool of water down here a little bit. Where that water sits stagnant tends to produce mosquitoes, especially the West Nile virus mosquito, which is one of our bigger concerns in San Mateo County. So just staying on top of this area is one of our key aspects of our job for the technician in San Bruno. These are some adult traps we set out. This is sometimes based on the public calling, hey, I'm noticing mosquitoes. And then we go out in response and we're trying to find where those mosquitoes are coming from. Sometimes if we have a West Nile virus positive bird, we go out and set traps for that just to collect mosquitoes and test them to see if the mosquitoes actually have West Nile virus. Fortunately, no mosquitoes had West Nile virus this year, so that's a good thing. Like I said, we always talk about dead bird reports. So this is a key thing. We always looking for the help from the public, so if you ever see a dead bird, please report it. There's a dead bird hotline you can look up, go to our website. And then we get notified of it. We go pick up the bird and we test it in-house in our lab on a PCR machine, and it determines if the bird has West Nile virus or not. And if it does, then that prompts us to do some continued work to figure out if there's positive mosquitoes in the area. This year in San Mateo County, we did have 36 positive birds, but none of those were in the San Bruno area. Usually they're a little bit further south where the weather's a little bit warmer. So you're kind of lucky up here where the weather's a little cooler. You're not getting too many of those positive birds up this way. Like I said, all mosquitoes were negative in 2024. These are the areas where we collected mosquitoes and tested in these areas. So, like I said, negative, that's a good thing. We had no human or horse cases for West Nile in 2024. We did have an increased number of birds that were infected compared to 2023. It was about 22 more than what we had the year previous. And that could be a couple things, word of mouth, people understanding what we do and calling in about dead birds. And then we go out there and pick them up and test them. This is Eric. He's a technician in the area. And this is just kind of a little advertisement of all the work we do, mosquito control, mosquito fish, so you guys can call about any of these things and we're happy to come out. Like we said, it's part of your property tax bill. So there's no extra charge. We don't take tips or anything like that. We're just here to protect public health. That's all I have for today. We do have an open house on June 21st, 2025. It's usually on the weekend. We have great activities for kids. All of our equipment's out there. Just happy to answer any questions anyone has. Thank you for your time.
Very much for your time, your efforts, and the report. We also want to thank Robert, who represents the city of San Bruno on the board of directors. Any questions or comments from colleagues at this time? Seeing and hearing none, I have gone to the open house. I think another one of my colleagues have as well, and it is of interest. And I think you'd be amazed when you go inside the facility and see what is there. And young people really enjoy what they see and what they learn. So with that, we will go and thank you again and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
You as well. We move on to item 6, consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented in an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. There will be a single public comment period for all items in this section unless a council member requests to pull an item for a separate vote. Any council members for a separate item vote? Seeing none. Any items for a comment or question? Seeing, hearing none. Is there any public comment for consent?
I have no speaker cards.
Bring it back to the board for action. Second. Motion Salazar, second in Hamilton to approve all of consent. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Be recorded as a 5-0 vote. Passes unanimously. Next, we're going to move on to item 7.
Consider and provide direction on the creation of a complete streets committee by merging the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee and the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee.
And so what we will go ahead and do is turn it over to our Community Development Director. And what we will do is have staff go through the presentation. Then we'll see if there's any questions on the presentation from council, see if there's any public comment, and then bring it back to the board, to the council. Director.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The item tonight is the consideration of creating a complete streets committee. Can you go to the next slide, please? The objective for tonight is to receive council direction on whether to develop a complete streets committee by merging the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, or the TSPC, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, commonly referred to as the BPAC. The TSPC was established in 1981, and its duties are defined in the municipal code. primarily to advise council on traffic safety and parking issues. The BPAC was a subcommittee of the TSBC created in 2003, though no formal resolution could be found that actually established the BPAC, and it is not in the municipal code. In the 1980s and early 2000s, when these groups were created, looking at different modes of transportation separately was common. In more recent years, the best practice has shifted to try to look at transportation issues through a multimodal lens. To further a past council strategy initiative to improve local governance through examining our committees, boards, and commissions, staff recommends council consider the formation of a complete streets committee by merging the TSPC and the BPAC. This would provide council with advisement from a committee that looks at transportation more broadly than the current setup. After the packet was posted, staff did email the members of the two committees to inform them of this item, and how, if council supports this concept, staff would seek to get their feedback at a joint TSPC BPAC meeting in April. And the intent would be that the formal changes to the municipal code and the new scope would then come to council in late May. Those documents would be informed by the joint meeting with the two committees. With that, staff recommends council consider and provide direction on the creation of a complete streets committee by merging the BPAC and the TSPC. And we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report and the information. Questions on the presentation from the Director of Council? Seeing, hearing none, is there, I do have one, sorry, Councilmember Hammond.
Very slowly switching between my screens, I apologize. So, I have comments for women, I have comments, but the question standpoint, is it feasible to, as we go through the process, because clearly, we're not approving the committee today, we're just you're looking for directions. Should we go through the work of forming that to bring back? Is it feasible to take steps to ensure that on this new committee, that staff reports that we prepare for the new committee explicitly state the impact or lack of impact of any proposed actions as related to autos and then to bicycles and then to pedestrians, just to make sure that all constituencies are being addressed in every item, even if it's just to say there's no impact when this change we're making this intersection is not going to change how the crosswalks work at all, or anything like that.
Just want to make sure I understand the question. Is the question whether future agenda items that are brought to council address those
for the committee itself?
For the committee.
So this is kind of an operational question for how this new committee might operate. I'm just kind of planting a seed with it that now, since if this goes forward, the staff will be putting together how this new committee would operate. My question is theoretically there's an item that would come before the Complete Streets Committee about addressing a change for a particular intersection. What I'm suggesting is that particular staff report should explicitly state, obviously it's already explicitly stating what the change is going to be, but it should also have like a set section for what is the impact for drivers, what is the impact for bicyclists, and what is the impact for pedestrians. And again, there could be no impact on a particular change, but there might be, just to make sure that we're addressing all the constituencies and nothing's ever falling through the cracks.
Yes, I certainly think staff can work with the two committees on trying to come up with the best way to have that in the procedures. So whether it would be literally 3 sections or just acknowledgement that items need to cover all the modes in its description, yes, I believe that can easily be worked in.
Sure, and I'm certainly not suggesting one of one or the other, the process will fit out the best way to do that. And then, my second question has to do with the formation of the committees. So are curious, are we at risk if we purposefully leave vacancies open so that we have a reasonable number of committee members when we would kick off the committee? Are we at any risk of falling below the minimum number of members needed for either of the committees between now and then? I know it's hard to, you don't know what you don't know, but.
Yes, at this point, there are enough members of both committees that they can keep moving forward. And the intent, as in the staff report, as put in the staff report, is we will recommend that we offer any of the existing board members be appointed to the new committee if they wish to continue, even if that ends up taking us over the number that we think the committee should be long-term. In the short term, we would want to get them all on board. So our belief is we're going to probably err on the side of that committee is going to be larger. We don't think at this point that we won't have enough people. If we end up having this joint meeting and a number of existing members say, I'm not interested in being on that, then that also will tie into doing once the bylaws are worked out and the scope's worked out, doing a recruitment to fill the rest of them in time for July.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilor Brown for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I think this is a good approach to combine them. My question is, would it be a combined or collaborative work from the BPAC and the TSPC when it comes to the crossover work? So like from the BPAC point of view, can they suggest any idea or collaboration of the design, even though they're not originally from the TSPC, but then will they have the opportunity to work or train when it comes to what the TSPC is currently doing or working on? So it'll be like a joint effort of what they're going to propose to the council or to what they're going to be working on.
Yes, there will be in the short term, the development of the scope and the regulations is going to be heavily influenced by the feedback we get at the April meeting if we move forward with this. And then there will need to be, or we will want to do training so that the members that were on the TSPC get more of the insights of the other modes of transportation, as well as the members who are on the BPAC get more insights on the others. So we will want to wrap that into those type of training opportunities so that all the members are able to look at and be conscious of the importance of all the modes of transportation, I should say.
Seeing no other questions, public comments, please.
Would the following members of the public please approach the podium? Matt Jones, followed by Ray Moser, followed by Rebecca Milano, followed by John Lambers.
Council. Good evening, council and staff. I did send an email out to folks yesterday, which I know a number of you received. Just to start here, I have been working for the Bike Coalition as a staff member as their director of advocacy for the past 7 months. And so in this time, I've been speaking with different cities up and down the peninsula about issues such as this one. I'm in favor of the merger of the TSPC and BPAC. I used to work for the city. I also staffed the BPAC and I served on the BPAC prior to working for the city. And during that time, what I realized was that the city was operating in a way that was very siloed between different departments. And so the way I see this is that this is kind of helping address that concern that I had where sort of planning was staffing BPAC, Public Works was staffing TSPC. And so it was resulting in kind of this disjointed process in the way that people did development reviews, street design. And so this bringing it all under one umbrella, I think would be a good thing overall. The concern I have is that there's been a substantial amount of conversation in the community around parking. I did receive some comments back from a TSPC member that I BCC'd on this email who said that there actually have been very few members of the public who have been using that outlet as a way to comment on parking, which makes me think that it looks like maybe they've been directly approaching staff and council as their outlet. So the big question I had around this is if you do plan on sunsetting the TSPC, where would the conversations around parking live, and what would be the appropriate forum to have those conversations? I think there's a big need for education around that topic, and just wondering kind of what the direction is from staff on council on that. Overall, I think having conversations around complete streets is a really important thing to the city that has been lacking in the past, and having an integrated approach into design is going to help move us forward. I did want to just give a shout out that there's bike racks right outside the rack. Having that ability to have options to get to where we need to go and taking bikes into consideration, I think is going to do a good job at providing a cheaper alternative, a healthier alternative to residents who are auto dependent in this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, guys. Question, you're referring to having both of these committees join as one?
I'm sorry.
Do you want both of these committees to be like one committee? Okay, let's start from the beginning. I think Alex told me, and Alex, we had our meeting on the 19th. You said the TSPC was approximately, and my memory's getting a little faded, so I don't know. You said they were 6 months behind? Or can they talk? Oh,
No, hold on. During this period is to address the council.
okay,
So that's
not a problem. I appreciate it's way off the mark anyway. As you guys know, I've been complaining about the TSPC for what? 3 times now I've been up here, talked to some of you individually, showed you the drawings. It's a mess. They are anywhere, my estimate, 1.5 to 7 years behind in their work. I have brought this up to a number of you. What are they doing? What's taking 7 years to load the cars going up and down College Drive? Did they not figure this out? This is amazing that you're even thinking of putting more work on their plate. They can't do what they have now. And I think that combining the two, although it may be a good idea theoretically, at this point in time, it isn't. You guys got to get on the TSPC or get him to get on the TSPC to get them to do to finish their work. Can any of you think of why this would take 7 years to slow the cars going up and down College Drive? I'd love to hear from you. And if any of you think this is a good idea, please spend 1 minute. I'll thank you from the bottom of my heart, acknowledging you guys saying yes and not complaining about that at all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Milano, and on this subject, I wanted to say I can see both sides after listening to Ray. I was not aware that the TSPC was far behind in the work. I personally attended a TSPC meeting, and my first question was, where were you when the subject around parking downtown was being discussed? Because I would assume that implementing a huge program, a $2.5 to $4 million program, the numbers I'm not sure of, would need some kind of committee. And I believe the chair of the TSPC said we're not sure why we weren't included in this conversation. I've also attended several other committee meetings in the city of San Bruno, and it seems like the committees in this town are not so advisory. Or maybe they don't feel like they have so much power. I don't know if that is a lack of training for people in the committees, but I do know that this training does exist. It exists here in the county of San Mateo, and I know that there is another program in Oakland for people coming on to committees. So maybe working on making the committees a little bit more efficient and having the appropriate items be put in the hands of the appropriate departments. if we implemented an entire parking program and we continue to hear from city staff that we don't have resources to address it, and you council, have full-time jobs or maybe are not aware of the day-to-day, I would think that the TSBC would be a good place to address our downtown parking issues. Like Matt said, the community needs to know, hey, maybe you don't love Rico every day via email about downtown parking. Maybe you go to a TSBC meeting. So again, community engagement, I think, needs to be a focus in San Bruno. I can tell you that as now an advocate for the city and trying to bring in more resources here, I'm seeing what desperate need there is in San Bruno. There are very limited resources, and it's not because they're not out there, it's because we don't bring them in here. And when they come to us, we don't foster those relationships. I, as part of the San Mateo County Leadership Council, have met with a ton of nonprofits in this county that have said, let me come and help you. PCRC being one of them, trying to mitigate some of the communication issues between the merchants and the business owners and the east side of San Bruno. We just need more engagement. And with the world the way it is right now, San Bruno can really make a stand of being the city with the heart and really uniting its people and really paying attention and showing that they care. We need to focus on building back the trust of our leaders, the trust of the community. I've been in here for a year and I heard they lie, they don't tell the truth. Where's the evidence? It's extremely painful to come here week after week and to be treated like we're not human. We have Elon Musk calling people like me parasites. So let's bring the heart back to San Bruno.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hello, council members. I'm John Lampros. I am a member of the TSBC, former chair of the TSBC last year as well. While I also agree that a holistic approach to traffic and pedestrians and overall transportation is certainly necessary, I also echo some of the comments made by some other residents where there is a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily call it backlog. There's many things that get worked to the TSBC that sometimes take a lot longer to get ahead of because of staff constraints and so on, and having to do, so whatever it is, what they do for traffic flow and those things. And I certainly understand the staff side of resource limitations. However, there definitely seems to be a need, like TSBC related topics that just get, 2 years, I think was one from somebody who had made a traffic calming request. That seems to be excessive, and I think that if we start to include additional workflow, additional items on the plate from both groups together, then that backlog is going to continue to grow. In the past, we have had joint meetings with the VPAC, and I think that may be an alternative to have continuous joint meetings. Again, I very much agree that holistic approach, not just to traffic and vehicles, but also pedestrians and bicycles and other modes of transportation is necessary. And I can't speak for VPAC, but I know that we both have thought about each other making our decisions. And I think that perhaps that's something that can be solved joint meetings versus fine. Either way, I think it's fantastic to bring forward an idea where we're looking at it, bigger picture, but just wanted to bring forward some of the concerns about backlog and things getting further behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
No other speakers.
All right. Thank you for those that are here, and thank you for those that spoke. Back to council. Staff is looking for comments and or direction. Councilmember Salazar.
So here's some of those comments. I have a question also about how the committee, the combined committee, would be staffed. Currently, there are completely different departments supporting it. I know a lot of the delays were due to the fact that we didn't have a traffic engineer for a long time, and so basically nothing was happening for a while. Is there a benefit to having more departments involved in addressing those very specific issues, or is it really just going to be a collaboration that really comes out of the fight?
Yeah, so the expectation is that the Public Works Department will be the lead department. But as noted, many of the topics around transportation can cross into other departments, involving arguably every department probably, except other than maybe admin services. There are examples where police department will need to be involved, fire, obviously community development, even community services in some cases. So the intent is the agenda items, there will be some that will be run by other departments, but the logistics of the board would be out of Public Works.
And in terms of the cultures of both of these, I've attended both bodies, and the TSPC tends to be very sort of very structured. They're following established set of interpreting laws and policies and looking at different cultures. Whereas the BPAC tends to be more of a hands-on, going out and doing activities type of committee. And so how do you meld those cultures and still have the same benefit that you're getting from these groups when combined? They're probably very different personalities that sign up and serve on.
Yes, the intent or the hope would be that the new board would retain some of those attributes of the two committees, because depending on the subject matter, it may be necessary. The other part that we will be wanting to get feedback from the existing committees are looking at the list of things that are on their plate and making sure that the ones that are believed to have the most type of impact on the community are prioritized, and possibly some of the other ones, like for example, one of the lines in the municipal code is about reviewing traffic studies and reports. Well, maybe staff can do that, and so there's going to be a question of, are there certain things in order to make sure the group can get through the work that needs to be done, are there certain things that can be moved to other locations, maybe come directly to council, or are there certain things that are being missed that should go to the committee? And so that's a discussion we're going to want to have with the group, and then we'll bring that forward to the council with recommendation on both the overall scope, the expected staffing needs, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Your comments? Direction? Councilmember Hamilton?
Thank you. You had mentioned regarding the Public Works would take the lead, and you mentioned that that the police and fire maybe wouldn't have as much involvement. I served on the TSPC for 12 years. We had a traffic sergeant at every meeting, or designee. Has that stopped? Can we not do that anymore?
No, I believe the police department is still there.
Okay.
And then it will come back to talking about the scope of the what the complete streets group would do. The question will be asked of all parties: is that still what we want this group to do? The answer may be yes. We haven't taken a run through as to what staff thinks may or may not change. That meeting in April with both groups is going to be key.
Sure. Okay. And then that makes sense. And I know that part of the conversation was more, who's going to be managing the projects that come out of this, and all that. But the TSVC, as Mr. Lampros I'm sure would agree, is also an outlet for folks when they come and they start having that conversation. People are speeding down my street. One of the very first things that usually would happen was, maybe we'll do targeted enforcement first to see if maybe the problem just goes away before we start re-engineering the whole street.
And I think a fair question becomes, with the tools we have today, can we encourage the member of the public to just contact staff and that same thing could happen, or have them wait to go to a meeting and bring it up. So those are the things that we want to talk about and see what we have in place and how to make the situation work in all respects.
Okay. So, continuing with comments, I would have rather seen the proposal go to DPAC and the NTSBC before tonight. That's kind of the process that we do for these things, but I'm glad to see that we're gonna have the members of both discuss and provide their input before we get back to take official action. So that's all, okay. As I said, I served on PSBC for a very long time. In general, I'm in favor of this. When we first launched, one member of the TSBC was also a member of BPAC. And that person served as the liaison between the two and gave a report to us on a regular basis after every BPAC meeting. So we were really, the two committees were, connected in that way. But then once that one person retired, never found another person who was willing to serve on both committees. And so then that connection was lost. So by its very nature, the Complete Streets Committee would have that connection. So I'm very much in favor of that. Based on some of the public comments, I'd like to really see us try to address, as we build out bylaws and processes, ways that we can try to increase the throughput for the committee. And what I'm hearing, and what was certainly the case when I was serving, it wasn't a matter that we had so much stuff we couldn't get through it. It was there wasn't enough staff to execute the projects that we were approving. So and then once we were toward the end of my tenure there, the number of items even being brought to us had slowed so much, and the backlog was upstream from the TSPC. And that's kind of when I started looking for greener pastures on the planning commission. So I definitely would want to see all of that addressed when we go through the process of forming the bylaws and the processes for this new committee. I very much appreciate Councilmember Salazar's comment regarding the differing cultures between the two committees, and that might be a reason to consider landing on a larger committee of 7 rather than a smaller committee of 5, and to increase the ability of the committee to be able to have more people who might want to go out and do events, and especially the bicycle events and the things that we see and that we love. And last comment is, it's going to be up to the council to ensure that as we move forward and we need to recruit members, that we, through our interview process and our vetting process, that we're looking for people who are cross knowledgeable or have cross passion across all of those 3 constituencies, so that everybody continues to be represented. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you for the report. As listed in the staff report, this is something that was brought up to the council before. Going back even further, this is something about good governance that previous councils have talked about before. So I am in support of Complete Streets Committee. I believe it is a good idea. I think combining both groups in one room so that they can share the perspectives from each side, because we're all interested in having safe streets for people who drive cars, walk, or bike. That's the whole point. And so when in the past, if we went to the TSBC, well, then it needs to go to BPAC, possibly, and then they get to go back and forth. So getting everybody in the same room at the same time to deal with it, there's benefits to that. The idea of things going down snuff, or there's a backlog. I recall there used to be a running list of various items, and at the point it was called the matrix. The matrix of, on this date, Mr. Williams on Concord brought this issue up and it had a running log of what was brought up and how it was going to be addressed. It wasn't really clear, but at one point the matrix disappeared, and so people would go to the TSPC, bring up the subject, have a petition provided to staff, and then they wouldn't hear back for a while. So I think as we move forward, how do we streamline things and relying on the experience of both committees, and now that they're going to be together, what should the council be doing to support making things run smoother and more efficiently? And we know that we do have staff limitations, and as Councilman Salazar said, we had a long period of time when we did not have a traffic engineer. And so maybe there is a backlog of things that take for, I don't recall, it might have been a year and a half, maybe longer, or we didn't have an engineer. But I think this is an opportunity to provide additional eyes and how we can make things better. And so I am in support of this. I would have preferred, of course, that you let everybody know in advance, like, hey, this is coming up sooner than later, or coming up sooner, so everybody prepared. I recall when we brought this up the first time, we had some members of our committees speak up about it. So I believe that we can do better things with the combined committee, and I look forward to this vote. This direction.
So just, and Mr. Hamilton, Councilmember Hamilton has the years of service there that none of us have served on that, so you know firsthand. And they did go ahead and create the toolbox, which was a way to start to streamline so that residents could say, I want a speed bump. What's the process? How do I go about it? So that was something that they created for the TSPC, or the bike head. Those members are appointed by the city council, interviewed and reappointed or not appointed. So that's not the city manager's job or role. That is his is with the staff. Ours is appointing the committee, commissions, and boards. I know Councilmember Hamilton wished maybe it had gone to BPAC and TSPC, but I think in this case, had a majority of this council said, I'm just not in favor of that. Then all this work and this time of these two groups coming together, setting some expectations or thoughts, and then it comes back here and it's like, no. So why did you spend our time in order to try to collaborate on something that majority of the council is not moving forward? So I think it was helpful for staff to come to look for some direction and then bringing the two groups in. But I think Councilmember Salazar's comment, as Councilmember Hamilton said, it is two different groups. The BPAC is we're going to go out there, we're going to do things, we're going to be engaged with the community. The TSPC is kind of waiting for the information and staff to bring forward items for them to review, take action on, and bring recommendations to the city council. So that is the interesting of gelling that together. I think that, I don't know, do we need more members than just a 5, 7, so that we have enough folks that can do the work and be a part of the process? If this helps us streamline some efficiencies and getting things off the docket and getting them taken care of, I think that's a positive. I do want to know, though, right now I believe the TSPC meets, I still believe they meet monthly. The BPAC meets every other month. So we have to kind of collaborate on that. How is that going to be? But I would like to see, when they do meet, that there is an agenda, that action and stuff is happening, and then it has that circle back around, as the Vice Mayor had said. There was this list, and then all of a sudden it kind of stopped. So I would like to see it move forward as well. And I think for sitting the two groups down and having a conversation at the table, I think is the right approach. This is something not new. This is something that we have been talking about, and so now it is coming to light for us to do this. The other time we had some committee members speak, that was on community preparedness and crime prevention. that's when you had some members come because they had heard that maybe that was going to be combined. So it wasn't these two groups, it was the other groups. And it was just people getting ahead of themselves rather than really knowing what we were looking to do, which is what the Vice Mayor alluded to. Is there any other questions or comments? And then, one more. I think it was also about outreach to the public. So when you're reinventing, if this goes through, it is, what do they hear? Where should I go? What do I bring forward? There's a speed bump. I know it's TSBC, but I wouldn't think to go to BPAC. So now that we're going to do that, let's set a clear delineation of where do you go, who do you contact, and you're saying the lead is Public Works. So just so that the community then knows, if this is a concern, if this is an interest, here's where we begin. And I think we just need kind of a step by step, whether it's community education and or the website. So that's it for my comments. Anything else, colleagues? Do you need anything else? Did you get enough direction or too much direction?
I have enough direction. Question for legal counsel. Should we have a vote?
Well, it says, consider and provide direction on the creation of a complete streets committee by merging that. I'm not legal, so you weren't asking me, but provide direction and taking action, I think, might be different, but we'll hear from legal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just reviewing staff report to confirm, but I think that your, just the direction you've given here should be sufficient as long as staff's clear on what that direction is. And I think I got this up, Mr. Gilly.
Okay, I didn't hear anybody opposed to that, the steps moving forward. And as long as you feel you have enough direction, then we'll thank you and we will continue on with the meeting. Now we're going to move on to number 8, council committee report outs. Do we have any for this evening? Okay, I'll just keep the meeting rolling because I had some, but they can wait. Comments from council members. So we have our first item, and that is from council member Alvarez. Discuss changing downtown parking hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I'm sorry, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So this is not to make a decision to change the hours. It is a discussion that the council members brought up to see if this is something to be added. As you know, when we last met, there were 8 items that went to staff to say, please come back for these 8 items. So what we're asking is, do you want to make this a 9th as an example? This is not to change the hours. I don't want to I want to set the expectation so nobody walks away disappointed, but it is not about the merit. It is more about making that an additional item. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Alvarez to explain that so that there's more detail. And then I will open it up for public comments and then it'll come back to council. So with that, Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick background on the parking program. Paid parking requirements have been implemented as of April 1, 2024 for downtown streets, a portion of the El Camino Rio and city parking lots. The first update provided to the public was on June 5th, 2024 on the new short-term parking to allow 20-minute parking option for 75 cents for on-street parking. The short-term option is designed to accommodate quick visits on running errands. Currently, San Bruno lots 1 through 8 is operating from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. And downtown streets were posted operating from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. On November 12, 2024 council meeting, the staff presented another update on potential program adjustment. One of the adjustment was to decrease potential morning hours. All the staff recommended no changes to be made and wait another 90 days for data before reassessing it. I feel that it is the right time to explore this option and be agendized on the next council meeting for discussion. Moreover, with many of the downtown merchants requesting changing the on-street parking hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. will encourage patrons to visit our downtown early morning and later night for dining in and not worry about getting a ticket. Since the request to remove paid parking and enforcement on Sunday was voted down, changing the on-street parking hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. would be an ideal compromise for our downtown merchants. In the recent news published by the Daily Journal announcing South City weighing on small business pilot program to offer short-term leases on some of its city-owned storefront properties, as well as up to 10,000 in tenant improvements as part of the pilot program. In my opinion, the city can offer smaller incentives to our merchants. First, by allowing the proposed changes to the on-street parking hours and hoping to increase foot traffic to boost our downtown businesses. With that said, there are still a few more issues we need to address and hopefully produce solutions on all the malfunctioning kiosks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's open it to public comments, please.
Would the following members of the public please approach the podium? Neil Sherman, followed by Rebecca Milano, followed by Matt Jones.
Mayor Vice Mayor Medina, and council members, thank you for all you do to serve our city. Thank you for turning on the microphone. I'd like to take a moment to reflect on basically the sheer lunacy of the parking program enforcement. San Francisco, one of the most visited cities in the world, it doesn't charge on Sundays. It doesn't charge after 6 p.m. in most neighborhoods, except Fisherman's Wharf and the Embarcadero, which is one of the most visited tourist destinations in the world, where the demand is astronomical. But in San Bruno, we've got a struggling downtown with empty sidewalks, businesses which are closing. I know 2 more closing soon. We are charging for parking on Sundays and holidays as if we're competing with Pier 39. Why? We were repeatedly told parking program can't generate revenue without squeezing residents, business patrons on evening Sundays and holidays. Think about that. We have a failing system that only works by publishing local shoppers and diners at hours when the surrounding cities don't charge for it. We aren't charging tourists to take selfies with sea lions. We're charging families who are picking up dinner from a mom and pop restaurant. We're charging a San Bruno resident for running into a store for 5 minutes on a Sunday morning. It's not revenue generation, it's extortion. The worst part is it's not working. Old Camino looks abandoned, it looks derelict. Businesses that survived decades are shutting down. The parking enforcement contractor, Labs, is infamous for its aggressive and unfair tactics, ticketing people even when they're attempting to pay at broken meters. And instead of encouraging business, we're pushing even more people to stay home or order from Amazon, and Amazon wins again and takes revenue and profits away from our city. Let's be real about something else. San Bruno's downtown is surrounded by its poorest neighborhoods. Historically, people avoided San Mateo Avenue and San Bruno Avenue because it felt unsafe. And instead of fixing that, the city has doubled down on policies that make it even more biting. Instead of taking about a minute, sometimes worst case, to find a parking place, now you have to spend about 5 minutes finding a kiosk that works, and another 2 minutes paying, and standing in the rain or the heat. And surrounding cities doing the opposite. Burlingame even suspended downtown parking during the holidays. Its meters proudly displayed free parking, happy holidays. They understand that downtown businesses are struggling and small adjustments can make a big difference. Other cities, Burlingame, South City, San Mateo, have revitalized downtowns by making them welcoming, accessible, worth visiting. What San Bruno done, which slapped on high parking fees and made people feel unwelcome. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Councilwoman Rebecca Milano again. I wanted to clarify make something very clear when we talk about the kiosks functioning or not functioning. Everybody needs to be clear that the kiosks as they exist installed right now are solar. They're solar. They're not hardwired into our system. So even if the kiosk is technically functioning, it still can take anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes before you are able to pay for your parking. That is a problem. So it's been addressed here several times. It's been talked about, but because there are so many issues with this parking, it's one of the big things that gets overlooked. So while we hear that there's all of the functioning, the kiosks are functioning at 100%, they're not functioning at 100% because they're solar based. So the contract that you signed that said that we can change the programming at, the night before, we heard the chief say, because they're solar, we cannot program them the night before because they go into sleep mode. So a decision needs to be made whether we're going to keep these kiosks as a whole, right, and honor the contract. And if that is so, then they need to be hardwired because a lot of these issues will be moved. If we can get in and out and easily pay, we would not have this issue, right? People on this council park in parking lots that are free when they come downtown to run errands. That's not fair. And what that says to me is that you don't want to pay and that you don't want to go through the hassle of dealing with that meter. If you go on Facebook every single day and next door every single day, you will see somebody complaining about the meter downtown. And it's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's not highly functional. It's not a really fast system. We've heard problem after problem. That's number one. And I want to clarify, Sandy, you said right now, thank you so much for bringing this up. Sandy, you said that Sundays was voted down. The last conversation was, as Mayor Medina said, was a conversation and you voted on 8 items to have further research. Sundays was not technically, it shouldn't have been a vote. It was the only thing that was voted on. So even the format of the last meeting didn't really make a lot of sense. It didn't make clear sense to the councilwoman, then you were all over here going, wait, are they voting? Are they not voting? Is it still on the table? Is it not? So there needs to be clarity around that. And the bottom line is that we've heard time and time again that this program as it stands is costing the city money. So the staff needs to prioritize this now. In May, Alex said, if you want to push off the budget and make this a priority, then we'll do that. And the council voted to not do that. The council voted to not put together a committee to focus on this. We're losing money every day. The city's losing money, the merchants are losing money. This is a loss for all of us. And the focus needs to be, if it needs to be on money, then focus on the revenue. Cut back the enforcement. You give last 30 days notice, according to the contract, you give them 30 days notice, and you cut back the enforcement. We don't need 4 people writing 1 ticket. If you had 1 person down there, there's little changes that we can make, and you've all been emailed about the small fixes to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Yes, hi again. In the last discussion, what I heard council talk about was process, and I think that comes up for me again in this discussion. I remember there being a vote by council of whether to consider a subcommittee to talk about these parking issues, which I think, the challenge I see with this recommendation is that it sounds fairly prescriptive, and I guess the worry that I have is that regulating parking is a very challenging thing to do, and there's a lot of different factors at play. There's the financial component, of course, but there's also just trying to get to the outcome. The point of regulating parking in a downtown is to try to achieve a certain level of parking turnover. And I know this is anecdotal, but I go to downtown quite a bit, and before the parking changes took place, it was hard to find parking spots in places on the avenue, and now it's much easier. There's higher turnover. I biked over here on the way over when parking was still being enforced, and there was still several spots on each block where, if there was no regulation, there would never be parking, because that's the goal, is to try to create turnover. So I think for me, what it comes back to is there's an education piece here, and I think we just have to keep repeating it because, it's new still for people. Of just making it as simple as possible, not a 30-page document, but like a 1-pager that just kind of breaks down why we're doing this and have it readily available for people. Because overall, I guess in the minority here of saying I love regulating parking because it brings in money for the city, but it also achieves the goal of reducing a problem. people were complaining about this before it started being regulated. So overall, I think the other thing I would request is to consider offering a carrot, but a different type, and that would be to run a small deficit, if this, assuming this is revenue neutral right now, run a small deficit at the beginning, put money back into the downtown in something that's big, visible. You know, you guys had the Measure G funds and repay the street, and you had a big sign that said Measure G tax dollars at work, you know, and say, here's your parking revenue money going right back into the downtown. And I think you'll be able to get a lot more people on board with the idea of having paid parking in downtown. And, you know, obviously, since I work for the Bike Coalition, the last thing would be to have different options like shuttle services, bike racks, bike lockers, so that people have alternatives that are more, you know, likely for them to pursue. They're free, so that they can make that economic decision too and have that built in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
No other speakers.
Is there anybody else here that did want to speak on this topic? Because once it comes back to council, that will be it for any members of the public. Okay, so I just want to ask council member Alvarez just for some clarification. You're saying 10 to 6 are used on, and you said the word on street. So can you define where exactly are you referencing to change it from 8 to 8 to 10 to 6?
My understanding is the on-street would be the San Mateo, Avenue.
So San Mateo Avenue.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be for our discussion. All right. Colleagues, questions, comments? Put it all together. Councilmember Salzman.
I'd like to ask one question to staff. So, council did give the staff, direction to come back with certain improvements, changes to the program. And can we get an update on where we are with that and what we expect?
Certainly. So the council in early January gave us direction, and gave us 90 days to come back. So we would be coming back in early April, essentially with recommendations or further analysis on those 8 items that the council highlighted for us.
Thank you. Every time this stuff comes up, we get really good feedback from the public in terms of what they're experiencing. You know, even though our votes don't always reflect what would obviously be support for downtown, I think we are unanimous here in wanting to see downtown businesses succeed. And a lot of times it seems very simple to prescribe what would appear to be quick fixes, but everything that we do, especially with this program, has consequences. And this proposal, while seemingly a solution, I think I'm also hearing from members of the public that they'd like to see other things prioritized. Fixing the machines, which I think would be a huge win for everyone. If we could actually get those machines to be user-friendly and functional all the time, would be far more beneficial than cutting hours of enforcement. This proposal right now is it's like a 30% reduction in the amount of hours that are revenue generating hours on basically every day, 7 days a week. So that's not insignificant in terms of the impact that it would have on revenue. And, you know, speaking about reinvesting those funds, I mean, it's something that started hearing these discussions first came up about, you know, what are we going to do with all the surplus money that comes from the program? Turns out that there is no surplus money, and we're actually not even meeting the projections that we set out. I went back and looked at some of the early staff reports on this, and originally we were looking at much shorter hours. We were looking at not enforcing on Sundays. We were looking at a much smaller footprint of parking spots. But when you start looking at the numbers, there was no way we could pay for the program by doing it. So we had to expand. And now even with the expanded program, it's not quite cutting it. So, I'm definitely open to making changes, even if it's, out of cycle and we're still waiting for staff to come back. I don't see that this particular change is going to provide significant benefit to the businesses, because I think we see sort of a ramp up of usage of the machines throughout the day. And so chopping off the ends, the tails of that curve isn't necessarily going to provide a lot of benefit to the bulk of the users, but it could potentially have a significant loss of revenue. And I don't think we have any data to show what that impact would be. So, um, and I know the merchants are getting restless, and I appreciate their patience. And I would just, ask that they continue to bear with us as we look at these things and really try to find long-term significant solutions that are actually going to make this work, and not try to do these quick fixes, which could potentially only make things worse, especially when we're still trying to figure out how we're going to pay for what we already signed up for. The concept about saving money by reducing enforcement is an interesting concept. Like, I know that our last contract has a pretty significant fixed cost, which means that no matter how much they're working, they are going to charge us for a presence. They're going to charge us for vehicles. They're going to charge us for equipment, office space, all these things that really don't change with how many hours they work. And so cutting the hours could potentially have some reduction, but I think there's still going to be a very large target that we have to meet in terms of making this program self-sufficient. And so it's not, I think, as simple as just saying, let's cut the hours and cut the bill, because the bill is not, there's not a direct correlation between what we're going to owe them and how many hours they are actually distributing. Again, it's a little more difficult than just let's lock it off and hope that it works. We've all been committed here to waiting for data and making some data-driven decisions. I hope that we continue to do that stuff, really understand impacts before we try to implement changes on the fly. Those are great. Any comments? Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilor Alvarez. When you asked me of the process to make a change, I was able to send an email to staff to explain the policy. It does take a while to kind of how this happened. So I do appreciate you approaching me and bringing this forward. I want to make it this, I just want to confirm with everyone in the room, we're not making the change on the dais right now. What we're doing is letting staff know of the 8 things that we approved staff to look at and come back to us. 3 weeks of data was something we voted on. And some of those votes, the things that didn't get a majority, didn't go forward. And changing the hours and beginning the enforcement later in the morning was one of the things. So here we are today. We're not making a change. We're directing staff to come back with what are the impacts to the program if we were going to make this change. And one of the arguments that I had regarding to have enforcement start later, it's a combination of, first of all, it's not needed. There isn't enough volume of cars parked in our downtown because approximately only 30% of our businesses open. I walked up and down the street, and it's, pretty easy to check out. Anybody could drive down any day of the week, and at 9 o'clock, there are tons of spaces. And this whole program, it was the intent so that we would have turnover. There isn't a turnover problem at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, probably not even 10. The issue about revenue and expenditures, this is something we need to look at, and when staff comes back to us in early April, hopefully they'll have enough of that information to look at this the program in total. That we are, it's my understanding, and at some point, Mr. Mayor can get staff to confirm, it is a contract that has fixed costs, but it's also highly dependent on hourly and based on hourly rates for each worker and a manager. And in that hourly rate, the rest of the license plate readers, those are folded into that hourly rate, the uniforms, the cars, the fuel. So how do we, in April, look at this whole system and see how much we would have to subsidize it? Because at this point right now, it's running a negative. And one of the options we should look at is reducing enforcement, because I think if we added the hours of 4 workers and a manager, at I think it was like $46 an hour, it's not going to catch up to the amount of money that's being put into the meters are being processed. And so this action tonight will allow staff to do that analysis and go, you know what? There isn't that much money coming in from agents, and it starts at a certain time when there's more cars in the street. A lot of the cars that are in the parking lots are from the employees that park, that are getting permits for free. So I have a question for our city attorney, is in the wording of the council comments, it's saying 10 to 6, is there enough leeway there to look at more than just, at Councilwoman Alvarez said, on the street? Is it able to look at the parking lots as well? So I think that's be beneficial as well, to do a more complete analysis of when our meters are being most utilized and how enforcement needs to assist with getting compliance.
I think I have the answer, but we want to hear from our legal counsel. She hasn't spoken a lot tonight.
Ready?
Thanks, Mayor Medina and Vice Mayor. You have pretty broad authority or leeway in what you want to have brought back on a future agenda item. This is not taking action on any particular item today. What you're doing is giving direction to staff about what you want them to bring back for you to take action, and you have pretty lot of discretion to do that. Great.
Thank you. So just to clarify, in the January meeting, we had a list of 13 items and we voted on all of them. We approved 8. And we did that because in the November meeting, because it was a bit rushed, it wasn't clear what the direction was. So I hope everyone's in agreement that that's what happened in January. So there were 13 items and we approved 8 of them for staff to go and look at them, look at our data. So for this particular change, starting at 10 a.m. is a no-brainer. That's why I championed this in the January meeting. Unfortunately, we did not get to 3 votes, but I appreciate Councilmember Alvarez for revisiting your decision to bring it back, to bring that part back. Between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., the data that we have that had already been presented to us and our own eyes reflect that there are many empty spaces, and likely because only 30% of the businesses are open. So that seems a no-brainer to me. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., that's not as true, and it's not as much of quite as much of a curve. I believe it's definitely not a bell curve from 8 to 8 when you're looking at the street, especially at the north end of the avenue. So I've had feedback on when I made this comment. I've had feedback from folks who say that it's casino traffic that's responsible for making it so congested on the street at the north end of the avenue. I don't agree with that at all, because the casino has ample free parking for its patrons adjacent to the building. And so why would anybody pay to park when they could park for free rentals to the building? So those cars that we see on the north end of the avenue, people patronizing our restaurants and our businesses, Murray Bar, Taqueria Leon, Cake Grill, Boiling, Beijing, Atlas, on and on and on. All those people are paying to do so. And I go downtown after 6, many times at 6, because there's lots of meetings that happen community days that happen downtown, they tend to start at 6, right when parking becomes free in the lots. Lots fill up real fast. And then I go out to the street and it's full. So I went to a meeting at Atlas. I had to park behind Mexicana and walk 2 blocks because there was no other parking nearby. And everybody on the street, they're all paid. It's not, there are people parking for free on the streets between 6 and 8. So I think that the demand is there. And as was said during public comment, the whole point of this program was to create that level of turnover. And the turnover gets a little dicier between 6 and 8 because the lots are full, but at least there is turnover. So I would be in favor of collecting data a little bit more granularly to see if the situation on the southern end of the avenue is different. There aren't as many businesses that have a ton of traffic after 6 p.m. on the southern end of the avenue. And maybe it would make sense to end at 6 in a more limited area of the avenue toward the south. So I'm absolutely in favor of moving forward to agendize this item, especially for the 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Piece of it. And I'm also in favor of looking at reducing enforcement, both for potential cost savings if we study it to see what those might be, but also to help us reduce the perception of the aggressive enforcement that the reputation for aggressive enforcement that unfortunately exists.
So for me, everything does have, Councilmember Salazar's, correct, that everything does have a reaction by our steps. The reason I asked Councilmember Alvarez specifically what was on the street, and that was San Mateo Avenue, is what the answer was. But Easton is 8 to 8, Huntington is 8 to 8. So now we're inconsistent. When people say, well, I thought everything did start till 10. Well, no, that's not the case. So we're just talking about San Mateo Avenue, park around the corner, Easton. Then that's an 8 to 8. Huntington's an 8 to 8. So we're not being consistent, which I think is one of the challenges. If you start making something 10 to 6 and over there it's 8 to 8, you can't expect people to memorize like, okay, what day is it and what hour is it and what area am I in? Also, I keep hearing this about holidays. We do not charge for holidays. The city holidays have not been charged for. It's been ratified within a resolution amendment that we've done to solidify that. It was cleared up, thank you, that we did go through the 13A and we said either yes or no. It wasn't like per se a vote. It was, is there 3 things, 3 people or more to come back, and we have 8 out of 13 that were presented. This Saturday at 9:50, because I was thinking about the 10 o'clock thing, so I went down, this is a Saturday though, not a weekday. I went down San Mateo Avenue. I counted 30 vacant spots on San Mateo Avenue to park. At 10:50, I counted 21. Now, I don't know how many spots are on San Mateo Avenue, but, or somebody may know. Okay. But again, I am saying like, okay, where would they go and will they move? Because Saturday, it was busy. And there's a lot of activity, and I know on Sundays it gets busy because we have, by no one's fault, we have 3 churches that have no parking. So they go to the lots. I've also gone, just out of curiosity, on a Tuesday and a Wednesday to count every car in the lots. And again, this is only 2 days, because if you could pick another day, it was very sparse. But one day I counted 99 in all of our lots. One time I counted 79, and that was at 8:15 a.m. on both days. So again, I get concerned about, again, and it was told, why don't we do a deficit? That's called subsidizing the parking. So are we going to spend dollars to subsidize parking for people to come to park? I think also And I once was told, and it could be wrong, and it's not going to be specific, that maybe some modifications could cost maybe up to $7,000 a month for some time modifications. And that could be 60,000 a year. So every time a suggestion comes up, like the Sundays, it was 104,000. I lowered to 100 in case there's a couple holidays. So I am not comfortable subsidizing parking to tell taxpayers and ratepayers in this community that we are providing parking and subsidizing it. We do, and Vice Mayor brought it up before, for the merchants, there's, was 80,000, I think you quoted, for the merchant tags, is a comment you made. So we need that we give out too. And so I'm just always concerned that, we did have 8 items. This would be asking for a 9th to come back in April. But again, it's about costs. And I will agree, because I do drive down early in the mornings at times. And the San Mateo Avenue is somewhat sparse at times. It depends what's going on. But I am also concerned with the inconsistency of time. I just don't know how to law enforcement, to LAS, to say some streets are 8, some streets are 10, so I'm speaking, thank you. So I am concerned with that. I think the inconsistency is what threw people on the Sundays, because nobody else charges for Sundays, so why do you? Now, I know Redwood City charges 8 to 8. It is Monday through Saturday, but they do 8. So when you attend their council meeting, you can pay, as I did, to go sit in the audience. So everything is different. Millbrae does plan to go forward with paid parking, according to the mayor, according to the city manager. So, I am just kind of having a challenge that we keep, instead of letting staff bring it back, we keep bringing things up. And that's where, when we talked about 5 initiatives, it was like, please, let's get the 5, let's move on them, and let's not keep bringing more things, because staff will tell you, as we all know, we held positions open for various reasons, and, they're trying to do what they have to do. So I just have the problem because I'm looking at it not making the money. And somebody, the CFO can correct me, but if we're not breaking even, we're looking more subsidizing. However, it was about what about last? Is there some balance to, shall we say, connect to the two? So I don't have that information. I don't know the staff does, or they're prepared, because really what it is do we want to bring this item forward? We're not really getting into the merit of the topic for tonight. That's not what this is for. And because staff isn't prepared for just any question we have. So that's it for me for right now. Councilmember Alvarez, I wanted to see if you wanted to say anything in regards to comments or statements, or you don't mind. You don't have to.
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, I just want to clarify that right now, our current hours on all our labs from 1 to 8 operates from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I think it would be less confusing if we change it from 10 to 6, because then it would be uniformly timed to ends at 6. When it comes to enforcement, knowing that from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning in the downtown area, there are less cars, and it would be less enforcement that last does not have to come out and issue ticket for X amount of cars that are parked on San Mateo Avenue. With that said, I think if we take away some of the enforcement, hopefully it will balance out the 2 hours that we're deducting from the time that we are imposing right now.
And that's what we don't know. We have no idea. We're speculating. And so, as I've always known, as negotiating and changing practice policy, as we sit up here live on the dais is not the best practice for anyone. Any other comments or statements? Councilmember Salazar.
Yes, a couple more thoughts. So I heard a couple of different things. So when I read this item in the agenda, it sounded like it was a discussion around specific change. And so if the request is that we agendize making this change, then my answer would be absolutely no. But I also heard from the other end of the table that it's possibly adding this to the list of things to be explored. And then when we have data, we would make a decision. And I could support that with the caveat that I wouldn't want this to delay the other work that staff is already working on. And as we know, everything has a staff cost as well. And so I would say if we could bring this particular change back as part of that package still in April, that I would support having that be included. However, if it's just going to delay this and not or jeopardize us making or having some information in April, that I couldn't support it because there are other changes that I believe are going to be more impactful that I would prefer staff to focus. So I'll leave it at that. Also one more thing. I also wanted to comment on the Sunday thing. Because it is interesting that yes, the wharf does charge on Sundays and they get people. Our data shows that people do like to go to downtown San Bruno on Sundays, and there's a lot of people there. And so we may not have seals, but we do have people coming down on Sunday, and so it does make sense to charge them.
Question to staff. I don't know who might be the better to what Councilmember Salazar said as far as, you know, this would be asking for a 9th item, which we had agreed 90 days. So we're adding something potentially. Can staff bring it? Because it's not that simplistic. I mean, you really have think of the accounting that you have to do to say, okay, you have to now between 8. Please. Please. We have to have the data come back with the CFO about like the 8 to 10, and then how do you quantify that? What happens if it's at 9.5? There's just a lot of variables too, so I don't know how simplistic it is.
And
can it all get done?
And through the mayor, if I can, I don't know how simplistic it is either. We are knee deep right now in the other 8 items, and all that was contemplated to take about 90 days. And I hear Councilmember Sal's all that loud and clear. It doesn't this turn into 90 more days of analysis. What I can say is, if the council wishes is to blend this into the other 8, we will strive our best to bring back good data and good policy that supports or doesn't support this idea. So I believe without the chief and or my CFO weighing in, and let's not have them weigh in, this is just a question around, do you want this agendized? That's the question in front of you. And if the answer is yes, we will do our level best to get that.
And then I want to go back, if you don't mind, Councilmember Hamilton, because I think what you were stating was maintaining. You were just saying from 8 to 10, which is a little different than
correct. And I think
members of Alvarez.
right. And I think I would like to throw out to the group to try to simplify this like thing. I don't see any reason why we would start the program at 10 a.m. in some places and 8 a.m. in other places. That doesn't make the data doesn't support that anywhere. And it would be, as you said, Mr. Mayor, that would be just super confusing. So why would we start at 8 on Huntington? We're starting at 10 on the Avenue. It just doesn't make any sense. So when I read this, the item the way that Councilor Alvarez read it in the agenda, discuss changing downtown parking hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, it ignores the fact that we already ended 6 p.m. in the lots, but whatever. But if we're just looking at the morning piece, I would suggest that the item that we have staff look at is starting enforcement everywhere at 10, everywhere, lots, the avenue, all the adjacent streets, the downtown parking program can start at 10 instead of at 8. It's just simple, and it's gonna be simpler for people and the data. If you're going to, if you're gonna buy into the argument that, that we should be moving it from 8 to 10 a.m. because the business not being open and all the other reasons, and I hope, since that's my position, I would hope people would buy into that argument. I don't see why you wouldn't apply that everywhere. So I respectfully put out there that the direction would be to analyze changing the start time of the entire program to 10.
Which the attorney said we have latitude. It doesn't have to be specifically as written in the agenda. You can modify things. Councilman.
Another component I'm thinking about, thinking of the complexity of the request. I think it might be simpler to evaluate how much revenue, for the small number of cars that are out there in the early hours. And I think it may be a bigger impact on the lots than what we have on the street in terms of lost revenue. I think where it gets more complicated is in evaluating the offsetting expense reduction with enforcement. And I believe LAS is also doing street sweeping enforcement, which isn't really tied to downtown parking hours. And so if they need to start checking cars earlier because they need to get ahead of a street sweeper, then there may not be potential there. And looking at the contract, it's not clear that we're paying for. I mean, we are paying for a number of people, but I didn't see anywhere in there where it's really telling us, that if we reduce. I mean, there was a minimum number of people, but it doesn't say that they would be really comfortable with cutting that, or they start losing money. It's the point if we're cutting too much into what we're allowing them to work. So I don't know that there's any variability there. I mean, I think starting those discussions with labs may be even a bigger piece of this if we need to start breaking down how they're going to invoice us and whether or not they're willing to do that. I don't think we've ever broached that subject. That if there's not an offsetting thing, that's kind of a big piece of the puzzle.
The mayor, I'm sorry, just to answer that, I mean, maybe perhaps it would make sense that and again, we're just agendizing, we're not giving the direction, but when we do give the direction, perhaps we ask for the data and the analysis for the 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. piece. Basin streets and lots and see what the data is showing us in terms of inventory there, so we can make a more informed decision. It makes it more palatable.
I think the city manager might want to chime in, and I also know you have to work on the budget, but.
So just a couple of things. I'm not sure we can get that granular, street by street by street. I just don't know that our enforcement is that level of detail. And one of the I think the question, if I can push to the council, and something that former Chief Johansson had reminded the council in the past, there's a question of charging for parking and there is enforcement, and they are not the same thing. So let's be really clear, and when you give us our direction back, please tell me which avenue, and if it's both avenues, tell me it's both avenues that we're supposed to take on this, because enforcing parking we will do based upon the code, right? We're going to enforce parking whether or not we're charging for it. And then there's the question of charging for parking. And I believe, and I will not speak for Councilmember Alvarez, I believe she's talking about charging for parking, or in this case, not charging for parking, but I don't want to, I'll let her clarify that statement. But again, former Chief Johansson was clear about, we will still enforce whatever the code tells us we're enforcing. Correct? Unless you're telling us to change our enforcement, the parking code as well. Which is a bigger lift as well. I just want to be very clear.
And it's an interesting distinction because they're not only enforcing for the meters, they're also enforcing the 2-hour limit. Two different things that are being enforced there, not tied to each other. It is complicated.
Is it possible to look into our contract, on page 13 and 15, from the contract compensation schedule, which states, the annual hours? I don't know what the total entails. I would assume it includes the lots 1 and 8, for parking enforcement for all the officers.
I assume we can look at it, yes.
I understand we were talking about timed parking or not charging for certain hours. Now we're talking about revisiting contracts and again, it just goes back to, I'm sure staff is sitting there going, okay, I mean, again, it's almost like 9 and 9.5 that we're asking now. So we're almost up to 10 things because now we're asking for the contract to be revisited, analyzed and see what the provisions are, what the staffing component is. And it just keeps growing. So that's where I get always concerned that we keep adding. And then we're saying, please come back still in your 90 days, even though we've just added 1 or 2 things. So anyway, that's any other comments or something you want to make a suggestion? Well,
Among huge. I believe typically the person who brings it forward is generally granted to make the motion. I'll be happy to say.
no, we're not taking it. We're trying to do. All right, hold on.
I know we can take it.
What we'd like to do is if the majority of the council wishes, then this would become, i.e. call it out of, like what Mr. Hamilton said, out of the 13, there were 8, this would add a 9th, but I think what staff needs is just really clearly define exactly what is being asked, so it's abundantly clear. And correct me, you can stop me if okay. Because what I've also heard is a little modification to what's written, and that's why, yeah, it's gotta be clear.
Okay. So just not to belabor the point, but says that somebody brings forward something to be discussed and to be agendized, then there's a motion, there's a second, there's a vote. That's our policy. So policy. This is what we spent months, if not a year, figuring out. We want to agendize things. There's a whole policy of how to do that. So I believe city attorney got correct.
Mayor Medina, Vice Mayor Medina, you're correct. When something is on the agenda to go forward for to be placed on a future agenda, there is a vote and give council vote whether or not to do that. I think what I was understanding, there was a little, the difference here was not that we were gonna, that it looked like the direction might have been going not to necessarily agendize council members Alvarez's item, but rather to give staff direction to come back as part of the bigger program to look at certain issues. You could do that if you're just giving direction and you wouldn't necessarily have to do a motion and vote on it. But if you are gonna tell staff to bring something specific, an agenda item, I would recommend you follow your past practice, which is make a motion, the council second it and vote on that and whether or not it shows up on a future agenda.
And that would mean separate from the other 8 items, and that's Councilmember Alvarez said at the next meeting. And really, that can't be done. I don't know how staff would get this item back without analysis at the next meeting. That's what she said.
Well, through the mayor, what I'm hearing is that or we have choices here. We can either go through a formal motion and second to agendize and talk about it some more, or if we can come to a consensus on what we want the direction for item 9 to be, we can just provide that direction right now.
Correct.
And I think that's better.
I agree.
Time's a ticket.
Yeah.
So
but they need clear.
I
I think there's been,
clear.
we
Yeah,
talked
absolutely.
things.
I'd be happy to take a stab at it. Please. But again, it's your item. Councilmember Alvarez, so I don't want to step on your item.
Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. I just want to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, that when I spoke to you about this particular item, I took the request out of the context from our November 12, which is part of the 8 items from the direction that we gave you. It's just that I added the time to it, but the context is there, which is the morning hours. And so I don't believe that, it would be added as a number 9 item for the staff to work on. I think if we make a motion tonight, it would expedite the process of them concentrating on this particular, it's a shorter study or research from the staff to pay particular attention to the enforcement contract part and also the hours. Those two vital information that we need to know in order for us to vote if we can make the changes.
So just to clarify, what I'm hearing you say is you do want to have a motion and a second to direct staff to come back at a future meeting under conduct of business to make the modification to the hours, and you had said at the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
The date wasn't specified, but what is doable? This is doable, Council King.
Well, my advice would be just to marry this with the balance of the parking programs. And given that this question is taking you guys 45 minutes to get to, we will have to hold a special meeting to get through the entire parking program. This is, the last time we did this was 2.5 hours just to get through the 8. So I'm feeling this is going to be a Herculean effort on staff's part, and we probably are going to need the council to set aside some time because we are in the middle of budget at that time, really trying to get through really a very important, even frankly, in my opinion, a more important topic. But we can set aside special time to let the public have a chance to digest all this, and certainly let the council have a chance to digest all this. My issue is there's a bunch of moving parts that are going to bump into each other. We're going to try to hold them separate, and then if the council sort of kind of cherry picks the ones they want, which ones actually marry together appropriately at the end, that's going to be the hard part for staff to understand and analyze sort of as they come back together again. Because again, right now there's 8 distinct ones, maybe a 9th one coming. We just have to figure out how this all comes back together again as one package. So I think there's a big lift here, and I know it's important. I am not dismissing the importance of this, and we want to get it right. And I think that's going to be the important part for us is to understand what is getting it right. So.
And Councilman Alvarez, because the way I'm hearing you say it is you want this to take priority over the 8 and to be solely worked on and brought back for potential action. And so that's where I think the manager might be asking is, my assumption would be if it goes forward, it would become with the report that was coming back with the other 8, because, it could have a domino effect. I don't know. One affects the other. So to piecemeal it back, I think there's more of a detriment, in my opinion.
Quick question. For the record, does staff have the items, the 8 items, handy that we can?
I don't know if I could conjure them up.
That's okay.
Again, the question tonight really was to agendize this or like, or not. Let's jump into the merits of the. No, it's okay. You put me on the spot. The answer is no.
So, Councilmember Alvarez, I'm not going to support putting this item in front of everything else. Of all the work that's already being done, we spent a lot, as the same manager said, we spent 2.5 hours hashing through that list of 13 and agreeing on 8 of them to bring forward. And I don't think that we should stop that effort because there's good stuff in there, including addressing some of the issues with the kiosks and with the app and all those other things that are crucial to the program. So I don't think we should go down the path of trying to agendize an item. We do have the opportunity here to add a 9th item to the list if we can agree on what that item is, and whether or not that becomes part of the 8 and is brought back at the same time, staff will have to tell us, and I think we can add into the direction that if this is gonna delay bringing it back, then unfortunately, we didn't add it to the list when we had the chance, and that's coming late, so the analysis on that will come late. But at least we'll still get the 8 to go through, and I did write up a proposal that I'd be happy to share. But again, I don't want to step on your item, but I just want you to strongly consider having us just give the direction tonight for another item rather than try to bring the whole thing back, because we're just gonna slow it down.
I agree. Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Also, I agree with what, the city manager suggested to bring it to our special meeting. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. So I would suggest, I'm not making a motion because it's not my item. I would suggest that we would, see if we can get concurrence on directing staff to study the impact of starting the parking program at 10 a.m. with separate analysis of the impact on the streets as a whole and the lots as a whole, and to make a recommendation. Also, make sure that I'm covering the entirety of your request, Councilmember Alvarez. Also, direct staff to study the impact of ending the parking program on 6 p.m. on the streets as a whole, and to make a recommendation. That's what I would recommend. That's what I would recommend. That's what I would love to be able for us to be able to have a consensus to give staff that direction to. And then I guess to make it complete further, if that analysis would delay bringing back the other 8 items, then this analysis should take place after that other analysis.
Yes, question, Councilor, perhaps on that line of thinking. So then, when we say study the impact, does that mean lost revenue only, or does it also mean what happens? Because, I mean, there was a big study that was done to figure out, what at what point we hit that 80% mark, right? I don't know that we're gonna go back and redo that study, so, I mean, and we're already charging, I don't know that we would have the ability to generate data about what happens when we stop doing something. We only go, of course, yeah, so I just want to understand, so we're the only financial impact, not really impact to what happens to parking availability.
So when I say impact, it does kind of go to both, because the revenue that we are currently collecting is based on there being cars. There being cars there, and cars that are being there voluntarily and choosing to park and to pay during the time. So, for example, taking the first point of studying the impact on the avenue or on the streets as a whole of starting the parking program at 10 a.m. That piece, the impact would be, well, how many cars are parking in the street between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m.? How much revenue are we getting from it, and what is the inventory? And based on that, make a recommendation on, what if we started at 10 a.m. based on the numbers, this is how much less revenue we're getting. Because it's going to be some, because there are some before parking. But overall, what is the inventory look like? It's not the 80%. Right? We're not getting the 80% occupancy between 8 and 10 a.m. I think everybody agrees to that. But where is that number? If it's 79%, then maybe we don't do anything. If it's 30%, then maybe we should do it, and then we would have that information to be able to make an informed decision. And then we'll do that exact same thing for the other areas.
Well, the question in my mind would be, the pricing does impact people, and you're basically forcing them to do certain things. So if it's free, people will do things that they wouldn't do, of course, if it wasn't free. So we're saying there's a low number during those hours, but if it was free, would people from the neighborhood be taking up those spots, and would they readily be moving those cars in time for free? Are we going to start issuing more infractions now because somebody forgot to wake up early and left their car there overnight? You start seeing things like that happen again, and so you may not be able to measure that And that's why I was wondering, like, you know, there's some unintended consequences that may come out of making those changes that may not be able to capture until you actually make the change. So I just wanted to be clear that that's not what we're asking for. We were just looking at revenue at this point. Correct?
I'm not looking at revenue aspect. I'm looking at inventory, whether or not we can park. It doesn't make sense to shorten up the hours in the morning because that area of the program isn't achieving its stated goal of 80%. This, you know, the goal everywhere was we want 80% parking usage. 85%, sorry, 85%. No, I want to be accurate. 85%. So if that number is significantly lower on a regular basis between 8 and 10 a.m., then it probably doesn't make sense for us to have labs going up and down the street enforcing and having the program start at a time when we're not achieving the goal. And because I want to make sure that we're respecting the entirety of Councilmember Alvarez's proposal here, we should do the same analysis from 6 to 8. I believe that just from my own eyes that analysis will show that we are at 85%. We're probably higher than 85% of that part of the avenue. Maybe on other parts of the avenue we're not, but we'll at least have that data so we can make that decision.
Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yes, please.
So I just want to clarify that earlier, the city manager mentioned that they were going to bring the 8 suggestions from the council or direction from the council in 90 days. So I would like to make a motion if we're adding my request to the 8 list, which in my opinion, I just changed the context. Nothing will be added. It would still be 8 to bring back in 90 days to be agendized. So we have 8 directions that we gave to the staff. And the city managers mentioned that he was going to bring the 8 items in 90 days. And if we're considering to add my request, the 10 to 6 changes on the hours, it would be an added 9 items. Then that would be bring back in 90 days. That's what the city manager suggested earlier. He mentioned, I think it was.
He said 90 days from when?
From the date we.
That was exactly have roughly another 30-ish days to less than 30 days to work on one more item. Just logistically, just so we had an item that window's already shrunk. Sometimes.
So he was going to bring 8 items in April.
Correct. Just for the record, if I can, we were going to bring 8 items back in the meeting in April. That would be the 90 days. And if this item goes forward, it would be 9th item to be, and in my opinion, we should just include it in the entire kind of omnibus parking program. Because it really is a wholesale revisit of the market. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
Makes sense.
It makes sense.
Okay, and I think what Councilmember Hamilton was saying is, by all means, staff has already embarked upon the 8. He doesn't want to see that held up, because if all of a sudden we've now placed this and they go, you know what? April it's not gonna be, for what you're asking, it's gonna take us a lot more time. So, and what he is suggesting is if that were the case, he doesn't want to prevent the 8 from coming forward since they've already started to work on that. He doesn't want it to delay. If they come and say, that 9th thing that you put on there, it's gonna be May now because we're not ready. He doesn't want to see that. Stop. That's what he was trying to say. But their goal might be April, but we don't know. I mean, we've asked them now to analyze the contract. We've asked them from the 6 to 8. We've asked them from the 8 to 10. We've asked for lots. We've asked for streets. I mean, we've just asked for a lot of data. And do I say,
No, that's accurate. And again, by two people who know this program best are not with the city right now. So we are working with new talent that's going to help us. And she's doing a great job, or they are doing a great job, excuse me. But they are both new. I mean, they are this program they inherited, and again, they want to get it right. We all want to get this right. I want to be very clear. I'm not resisting any of this. What I'm trying to do is just set expectations clearly so that when we bring something back, and if the council offsets something that we missed or we got it slightly wrong, or the audience says the same thing, if we just keep changing horses during the race, it's just going to get harder and harder for us. So, I mean, really, I can't state this enough. We are looking at a wholesale change to the parking program, which was not priority this year for us to do. And then we're doing it right during budget season, and the impact is to the finance office and to my office and to the police department's office, the police department, excuse me.
thank you for summarizing that. So, you heard what Councilmember Hamilton had read. Thank you for. Is there a consensus on that as was read by Councilmember Hamilton? She could read again.
I can read it again if people would like.
Maybe, well, please.
Direct staff to study the impact of starting the parking program at 10 a.m. with separate analysis of the impact on the streets as a whole and in the lots as a whole, and to make a recommendation. Also, direct staff to study the impact of ending the parking program at 6 p.m. on the streets and make a recommendation. If this item can be accomplished within the 90 days of the other 8 items, great. If adding this item would delay the completion of the 8 items by April, then it should be addressed after the first 8 item analysis is complete and can be brought back to council separately.
Mayor Medina, if
Yes.
I might,
Thanks.
just following up on the question posed to me earlier, given the significance of this and the length of the discussion tonight, I recommend that by doing this, it would probably be more effective to have a motion, a second, and a vote, just to make it perfectly clear what the direction of the council is on this significant addition to the work that staff's already doing.
And Councilmember Hamilton, if this goes forward, can you submit that to the clerk?
Absolutely. So that's okay. Right here. I think copy paste is where
She's will probably appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, so is that?
I can make a
I
motion.
think she should make the motion to write it.
That's right.
I move the motion to approve as read by Councilmember Hamilton.
Motion made and seconded, as read by Councilmember Hamilton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So, and then, City Clerk, Councilmember Hamilton will forward that to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing that. So let's move, is there any other council comments from Councilmember Hamilton? Mr. Salazar, Mr. Hamilton.
So tomorrow is our monthly second harvest food distribution at Bel Air Elementary. We can always use volunteers. Come by around 1:45 p.m. It's behind the school in the back parking lot. And if you or someone you know and love are food insecure, you can be signed up on the spot. So that's tomorrow from 1:45 to 4 p.m. Don't come at the end. We may run out.
And I wanted to say before we left the last topic, just so it's known. What the council has done is have 9 items, staff's bringing back, or 8 and then 1, however that works. And that does not mean, nor is it a guarantee, that the council looks at the data and the information and says, you know what, we need to maintain what we have, how we have it, or not. But I just don't want expectations to go out and say, hey, in April, things are now confirmed that they have changed. That is not what occurred tonight. It was simply just there was a motion, but in essence, adding the 9th item to what's presented to us back in January. So with that, I'm not going to speak. I'm going to let everybody go home. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on March 11, 2025 at 7 o'clock. Meeting is adjourned.